Russian Federation, Russian propaganda, they proposing something unmaterial. Okay, first of all, they would like to undermine your current life. They would like to propose you something in the clouds. You have to get rid of your authority, your current leaders, and maybe in the future you will have the more good life comparing with your current position. But you have to understand, you have to ask yourself what kind of life there will be.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of On the Edge. In this edition, we'll be talking about the progress of the war itself. Now, we're not going to be turned into a show that is what I refer to as scrimmage line coverage, and that is to say, fixating on every kilometer that is won or lost and by whom, how many tanks are destroyed in any one given day or missiles fired. No, we're going to be talking about things in a bigger picture perspective, but a snapshot of where things are currently. Because our guest is military analyst Ivan Stupak. And equally as important as him being an analyst, it's important to talk to him because he is a former officer in Ukraine's security agency, the SBU. And that allows us to talk about things on our second front, and that is the covert front, what is happening beneath the surface, whether it is espionage or sabotage or information warfare. We talk about as much of it as we possibly can in the time allotted to us. But I think we're going to have Ivan back because there is just so much to discuss. Nevertheless, in the hour in which we're about to talk about things, I am convinced that you will learn something new about this war that you were previously unaware of. So, Ivan, thank you so much for coming and talking to us.
Thank you for the invitation.
There are a lot of topics to discuss, but I'd like to start with the war itself. The Russians continue to fight in the east.
Yeah.
They make very small advances. They lose a lot of men, but they continue to make advances.
Yeah.
How far do you think Russian forces can go in Ukraine?
Okay, tricky question. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, currently, Russia is still advancing on a battlefield, we have to admit, unfortunately. Slowly but surely, maybe tens of meters every day, maybe 100 meters of every day, but they're still going and they're capturing new territories of Ukraine. It's clear, we understand.
Mm-hmm.
But here we have some locations where Russia completely stuck. For example, it's a Kherson region. There is no offensive operation, only striking other part of Kherson river, shelling city of Kherson. Okay, it's clear. But the rest of locations, there are severe clashes. For example, Kursk region, severe. Pokrovsk, incredible number of battle clashes during the day. It could be several hundred of clashes during the day. Non-stop, just shelling with artillery, with FPV drones, with just simple drones, lots of aviation in the air from Russian side. So unfortunately, Russia is still going on Ukrainian soil.
Mm-hmm.
Because of several things, because of manpower, because of heavy equipment. We have no such number of heavy equipment. We have no superiority in the air. So, unfortunately.
Do you think that they can take a city like Zaporizhia or Dnipro?
No. Currently, right now, I think the possibility of taking such city is equal to zero. But it's highly likely that Russia could, step by step, closing towards the city of Zaporizhia, at least the distance of 20 kilometers. It's more than enough, and they start shelling this city.
Yeah.
As I mentioned before.
As they do in Kharkiv, for example.
For sure. And it will cause people will leave the city.
Mm-hmm.
People will close their business. There is no taxes paying from the business.
Mm-hmm.
People will leave to Europe, to Asia, to Latin America, or whatever. And the city became ghost town.
Mm-hmm.
And Russia would like to see this kind of scenario. No people, no living, no taxes, no money for funding, spending on military issues. It's also a good scenario for Russian Federation. So the scenario is terrorist attacks, shelling, killing as much people as it possible. You could see it every day. It's not we are talking with you. It's not just a kind of Ukrainian side of propaganda. No. You could see it every day, lots of footage in YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. Mm-hmm. You could see it. I'm just referring to your audience. You could see it. You could see it every day. Not like a JD Vance in the reels, but it's for sure. It's for sure.
Yeah. Well, do you think they can take Kramatorsk?
Also tricky question. Look, now we see...
And the reason why I asked that for my audience, Kramatorsk is a city which is often seen as the kind of gateway to Donbass.
It's the last big one.
The last big one before you kind of enter into Donbass. And it's used as a logistical hub, and it's a staging area and all the rest of it. I've been to Kramatorsk many times. I've seen the lay of the land. I've seen the possible defenses for it. It will be a hard city for them to take, no doubt. But do you think they can?
Okay, look, they changed their strategy from the city of Bakhmut when they tried to attack directly, but now they're using strategy just encircling the city, cutting supply roads, and it works good, unfortunately. You could see, for example, city of Vuhledar. So our soldiers told me, look, this city could be held at least, 6 or 7 months more, but we have to withdraw from the city because all supplies routes were cut by Russian artillery, by Russian saboteur groups, FPV drones, and we have to leave this city. So, encirclement of the location. And now they're trying to, if it's possible to open for your audience the map, you could see the city of Pokrovsk. They were trying to encircle from the left, or from the west and from the east side, and the city of Slavyansk. My friend of mine, who is now a member of Ukrainian Armed Forces, he told me the last months we could definitely see the increasing number of shelling of the city. So previous period it was 1, maybe some 2 shellings, but now almost constantly shelling.
And which city are we talking about?
The city of Slavyansk.
Slavyansk.
Yeah. And one more great thing on Russian side, it's aviation and the flying bombs. It's a problem because these bombs, they started dropping these bombs, and the first stage of this war, it was about 30 or maybe up to 40 kilometers of the distance of this bomb. But now, using advanced technology with special wings, with special engine, this bomb dropped from a high altitude, could glide and could reach about up to 95 kilometers. So just imagine, okay, it's not a precise weapon. It's not a precision. No. Well, one bomb, okay, it's missed. Okay, just launch one more, drop one more, and finally, from the 11th or 15th bomb will reach its aim and destroy everything on the ground. And
it's a terror weapon. It's
a terror. It's not one more time. It's not a precise weapon.
No.
It weighs about the maximum weight of this bomb, 3,000 kilos. Just imagine 3,000 kilos in the range within 200 kilometers. Everything is destroyed or
200 kilometers or meters?
Meters. I'm sorry, 200 meters. Lots of damage could be done with this bomb. So
they're terrible, terrible bombs. I've seen footage of them, and I've heard people talk about what it is to be under attack. I mentioned Kramatorsk because maybe if they can take that, then maybe Putin can claim some sort of victory because he will have taken Donbass. But he's never going to take Odessa.
No chance.
And he's never going to take Kharkiv. And he's never going to take Kiev.
But about Odessa, he's still dreaming about Odessa.
I know he does, because he has to.
Because he and his military command, Mr. Gerasimov, they were totally sure that we will get Odessa because we have superiority on the Black Sea. We've got lots of vessels with lots of artillery. The Ukraine, no. To be honest with you, Ukraine have no fleet at all. No fleet at all. But somehow Ukraine managed to build these so small drones. And first of all, on the first period, these drones were considered by Russians as, what is it? It's a small bugs. But you could see these small bugs or small mosquitoes, they now could sink lots of Russian vessels. And about 30% of Russian Black Fleet now is out of use.
Yeah, they can't sit in Sevastopol because it's too dangerous because Ukraine still has Odessa. So they've moved to Novorossiysk
and Abkhazia.
And the deep port.
One more thing about the Odessa and why they're dreaming, because why they're dreaming about Odessa, because Odessa, it's a big city with huge port, with lots of facilities on the side, and about Moldova. Moldova, from Russian perspective, it's very easy to
If you take Odessa, you can make it to Transnistria in Moldova. And that cuts Ukraine off from the Black Sea. It restores Russia's dominion of the Black Sea. And I think that's, without taking Odessa, no matter what Putin says, even if he does take Kramatorsk, if he can't change the government in Kiev and he can't retake dominion of the Black Sea by taking possession of Odessa, he's lost over a million casualties, and there'll be so much more as the war continues.
Okay, about the casualties. Now we could see, according to everyday reports from Ukrainian General Staff, about 950,000 of Russian individuals are out of use. So maybe someone died, someone lost without any information, someone was injured, severely injured or lightly injured. But to be honest with you, I'm not so proud of these figures. I have some doubts about these figures. I will explain you why. BBC and Russian opposition outlet, Важные истории, they are counting casualties from Russian side, and now they have 100% confirmed number of casualties from Russia side, about 105,000 of individuals, 100,000 of Russian individuals up to this period. But for 100%, they've got confirmation from the parents, from local authorities, they've got the pictures on a gravestone. So at least,
so these are dead.
Dead.
100,000 at least.
At least for 1,000%.
Yeah.
So with no doubts. So we have to start counting from this point, because look, I'm not talking about that Ukrainian side will provide misinformation for Ukrainian citizens or for foreign citizens. But look, it's a war. It's unable to count appropriate number of casualties. For example, we could see a Russian tank, the T-90 Prorыв, for example, and lots of Ukrainian detachments were shelling this tank, for example, with mortars, with artillery, someone with, NLAW or Javelin, and each detachment will count this tank. Oh, it's ours. Oh, it's ours. Oh, it's ours. And in the total report, there will be 4 tanks destroyed. You understand?
Yes.
It's a war.
This is
it's
similar.
Not deliberately.
No, I understand that. This happens in war. This is why.
And nobody knows how many.
It's widespread that it happened to the U.S. forces in Vietnam, that they would claim, a lot of different forces would claim the same death of.
Yeah, and nobody knows how
the
many
enemy.
exactly number of individuals were in these tanks.
Yeah.
Okay, at least we consider 4 of them, but tank could be empty. But we consider, okay, 1 tank and 4 dead soldiers.
Well, aside from the casualties, it doesn't seem like, even if the casualties aren't enormous, then they're not moving.
Yeah.
That's the important thing. So let me ask you on the other side of the equation. We've talked about Russia capability and Russian intent and capability, with their strengths. Let's flip it on the other side. How is Ukraine doing? How are Ukraine defenses holding up? Their offensive capability, and also morale. How are things going for the Ukrainian armed forces?
Okay, once more time, I would like to be honest with you as much as possible, but I have to admit, the morale is not so high, to be honest with you, okay? Because lots of reasons. First, on the first, maybe several months of 2022, the morale was on incredibly high level. Skyrockets morale. But starting since October 2023, when we failed to regain our territories during a counteroffensive operation, lots of people understood, okay, this war couldn't be won by Ukrainian side. Because lots of soldiers on the Russian side, they got more manpower. They got more of some different military facilities. They could produce tanks, produce aviation, artillery. They could escape from the sanctions, and the economy of Russia much more bigger comparing with Ukraine. To be honest with you, it's clear, and there were some problems with supplying Ukraine from European countries, from United States, and those famous and unpleasant moment when 2024 supply from Russia from United States side stuck for months. For months,
for 7 months.
Since October until April 2024.
It was stuck in Congress.
Yeah, we are not able to produce anti-aircraft systems, unfortunately. The Patriot system is the main system to protect our cities. So, and currently, right now, lots of people understand we have to stop this war because we are limited with manpower. Lots of our soldiers died. We could see on the Maidan Nezalezhnosti, we could see how many flags in the ground. So 2022, I've got one of the footage when I saw there were only several flags in the ground, but maybe 5 or 4. It was March 2022. But now it's incredible number. It's just a sea of flags, and there is no free spot to put a new flag. So we've got lots of our boys and girls died on this war. So we have to stop this war. I do understand. It sounds maybe not so patriotic, but I would like to be more pragmatic. It's impossible for us to regain this territory in military way. We have to understand. It's important for us to stop Russia from advancing deep inside Ukrainian territories. It's just a main military objective.
When we talk about weapons being delivered for Ukraine, there's also a domestic capacity that is growing. It's my understanding. Let me address that first. What is the domestic capability for Ukraine to defend itself? Give me a status report.
Okay, good question. Look, I'm not able to provide you with the figures, with numbers, because it's secrecy, top secrecy.
Of course it is, yes.
But
rightfully so.
Yeah, and I could tell you about Ukrainian produced weapon. Okay, maybe it's not so sophisticated. It's not cutting edge weapon. We have to understand. Comparing with Western supplied weapon, it could be compared this way. Ukraine could produce X, and we are supplied from United States with a chainsaw. So X, it's very reliable. It's very simple.
Right.
But chainsaw is more advanced. But it's much more expensive.
You can cut through a lot more trees with a chainsaw than with an axe. Yes.
Yeah, but currently we are producing our our shells for mortars, for artillery, for tanks. We're producing our Bogdana self-propelled artillery systems on Ukrainian soil, underground. Every day, these locations, these sites are shelling with cruise missiles, with ballistic missiles, with drones from Russia's side. Because, to be honest with you, Ukrainian territory is not so huge. It's unable for us to hide any big production from Russian eyes, because they've got satellites. Russian satellites. Also, they've got Chinese satellites, because it's easy for Russian companies, for Russian military defense, to buy satellite images from Chinese companies. It's just a business. And they could see, for example, at night, the spots where lots of heat produced. And they would understand, here, if you've got some productions, and it's just a bright, extremely bright, comparing with other locations at night. So, and you can understand. And they're trying to shell these locations. For example, Bogdana, now Ukraine produces about 20 pieces, 20 units per month. So incredible numbers. We started only with 5, but now it's about 20. And about 80% of details are produced in Ukraine inside. And about...
I'm sorry, what percentage?
80%.
Of the Bogdan is domestic.
Yeah, domestic. Yeah, and our government is tendency to reach about 95 of details. 95% of details produced inside Ukraine, not outside.
For the Bogdana.
Yeah, for Bogdana. Okay, to be honest with you, about the projectiles. Okay, not so much of them are with great quality, because they're produced deep inside underground. The manufacturing line is not so sophisticated, but we're able to produce. It's very cheap for your audience. For example, typical Soviet caliber, Soviet era shell for artillery costs about $500.
Okay,
500, but one sophisticated NATO 155 millimeter caliber with GPS, it costs about 5,000 euros.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and you talk about like them trying to pinpoint and destroy factories that are producing weapons. Obviously, part of that involves, unfortunately, covert operations, spies, espionage, people that are. And I want to talk about that, and I want to talk about that whole aspect of your expertise as an SBU officer. But before we leave the battlefield and the military issue, America is still giving weapons to Ukraine, more or less, but it's not as reliable, maybe. There's a new chancellor in Germany.
Yeah.
The Europeans do seem to be waking up to the fact that they can't rely on the United States, and if they want this fight and want to support Ukraine, they might have to do it themselves. What's your perspective on European support, German support specifically, and maybe getting like Tauruses?
Okay, Tauruses. Okay, let's talk about the Tauruses.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Ukrainians, lots of Ukrainians, they would like to see, they would like to get Wunderwaffe, something which could, some kind of weapon which could change everything on the battlefield. For example, we were expecting HIMARS, ATACMS, F-16, Abrams.
But it's all going to be the one thing that's going to be the magic bullet.
Yeah, but we've got it with a teaspoon portion. So, okay, here is 2 Abrams tanks. Here's 2 F-16s. We need at least 120 of F-16s, at least 120, just to be able to protect our cities deep inside territory and to conduct some military operations. Currently, right now, we've got about, if my memory serves me well, about maybe up to 20, but it's war. Some of them are damaged, some broken, some we lost. unfortunately. At least one, we've lost with a great pilot with call sign of Moonfish. And it's not good. About the towers. Okay, Ukrainians expecting to receive these missiles. It's cruise missiles launched from the air to ground. It's an air to ground missile. But look, Germany limited with these missiles. Accordingly to open sources, in general, they were produced about 600 missiles, Taurus missiles. Several of them were transferred to Spain. Several of them were used during training operations in Germany. Okay, we could expect only for maybe up to 100. It's maximum, I think, from my side. But one more thing, here is some international restrictions. I don't know how it's correctly to be named in English. Режим контролю за ракетними технологиями. How it's called? No? Regime about
regime of technological
rocket for transferring rocket technologies. 35 countries they signed this agreement, and they are not allowed to transfer missiles to third countries with range more than 299 kilometers. So that is why we've got only ATACMS with 300 kilometers range. We've got Storm Shadow with 250 kilometers, and that is why
this is the fear of the Western powers, that Ukraine will strike deep into Russia and provoke an escalation.
So that is why we've got Taurus with export variation 299 kilometers. So we have to understand. Unfortunately, it's one side. About the Mr. Merz, I was talking to some of my German friends, and they told me it's a extremely best option for Ukraine among all of German politics currently right now. He's more pro-Ukrainian. He more anti-Russian, with more anti-Russian position, and he makes decisions extremely quick comparing with a regular German politics. So
that's welcome.
Yeah, that's welcome. And now we are waiting.
We could use some more leopards.
Yeah, but the next issue, Germany,
even if it isn't a Taurus, I mean, more leopards.
Germany doesn't have great number of tanks.
No,
there is no super pooper grocery store which we could get in and buy any kind of military equipment we want. There is no in any part of the world. This military equipment should be produced. It takes time. It takes years to produce some sophisticated military equipment. For example, American-Norway system called NASAMS.
Yes.
This system is produced on two continents, and in supply chain, it's about 1,500 companies. 1,500 companies. It's extremely difficult to produce such kind of.
Well, it's the benefit of being a NATO partner is that you can freely exchange that.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
But from my perspective, we are not able to replace supplying from United States on a short period term, but on a long period term, we will rely on our European partners and countries, for example, UK, France, and Germany. Germany announced to provide fund those military spendings with 500 billion of euros on the next periods. It's an incredible number of money since 1933.
Yeah. Well, it has to be, I'm afraid. And for myself, as far as the U.S. is concerned, and I'm somebody who I've been in combat in a Bradley before, and if we have surplus Bradleys that can either be sent or bought, if now Ukraine has to be buying Bradleys, then so be it, because I think the more Bradleys, the better. Let's move away from the military a little bit.
Okay.
And let's go to talking about your experience as an SBU officer. And for those who don't know, the SBU is the Служба безопасности Украины.
It's a counterintelligence agency.
Intelligence and counterintelligence?
Just counterintelligence.
Primarily or exclusively
Exclusively counterintelligence.
Great. That makes my questioning that much easier then.
Okay.
When we talk, like, for example, when we were talking about the factories and the production and protecting that from espionage, from spies, from Russian spies or collaborators in Ukraine, tell me a little bit about how Russia conducts itself covertly through espionage, through sabotage, through intelligence, information warfare techniques. What, as a former SBU officer, what do you see your enemy in the GRU, SVR, FSB, or all of them?
All of them, okay.
Right, okay. So what does Russia do when it conducts
first of all,
this kind of warfare?
They would like to obtain as much information about Ukraine as it possible. It doesn't matter from what kind of field. Economy, social, foreign policy, of course, military, of course, about law enforcement officers, law enforcement agency, about social situation, what kind of
civic
society. Lots of information they are totally need for every day for routine. It's not just, we've got it previously last year. No. They need day by day. They need information about the results of airstrikes. They have to understand whether the strike was successful or they have to strike this location one more because the drone were intercepted or the ballistic missile was destroyed. So they need this information in day by day, in routine mode. So what kind of techniques they are using? Okay, of course, we have to divide. Okay, let's start from 1950s. So sorry for this.
No, I know. I think I know where you're going with this. So, and this needs to be done.
In those period, they are divided two vectors of intelligence gathering information. So Western type and the Eastern type. We've got Western. It's European countries, the United States, and the Soviet Union. Soviet Union, they focused on human intelligence because it was much more easier to recruit lots of foreigners in UK, in Italy, in United States, and to ask them to work on Soviet side. So their Soviet KGB, Комитет госбезопасности, it was at the same time intelligence and counterintelligence agency. They were extremely professionals in recruiting people on their side. So extremely.
Very good at it.
And the Western side, they do understand, okay, it's very difficult for us to conduct human intelligence. Let's focus on technical issues. And they started lots of technique programs. I mean, Sunbeam, satellite intelligence, radio intelligence, So currently, right now, they focused on technical side. And the Russians, they're still focused on the humans. And they're trying to use Ukrainian people and how it's called, to завербовать, to recruit.
Yes.
To recruit Ukrainian people using social media. Telegram, Facebook, Instagram. They are looking for Ukrainian people, writing something in mass media, and they're starting chatting with them in direct messages and recruiting them. They're offering whatever you need. If you need money...
And these would be people, Ukrainians, who were either in security forces, military, government, as I say, civil society, so the engineers and influencers and...
In different spheres.
Journalists.
In different spheres. Okay, they would like to get as much people as possible.
It's fascinating you say that.
Because proposing what you want. If you'd like to be on Russian side, they're proposing to you Russian passports or Russian some documents. If you need money, they will propose you money. You need $10,000, they will propose you, but they are not obliged to pay you. They will propose you. You will do something on behalf of Russian intelligence. For example, setting some hidden video cameras or microphones or counting numbers of military tracks which passes by your windows. So, okay, you will do it, but they are starting you blackmail. Of course, if you wouldn't be agreed to continue cooperation.
Because you've already been a traitor once.
Yes.
And so now they have you compromised.
They will give you this information to Ukrainian counterintelligence. One more. They are making lots of spam letters using emails. So even I've got several of letters from 95th region of Russia Federation, Chechnya.
Mm-hmm.
They were proposing me to stay on their side, to provide them with lots of information. It was just a general letters, and I do understand they're just spamming, expecting that someone will answer and will start cooperating with Russian side.
Sounds like the Podesta situation in the United States.
And once more, okay, of course they are looking for high-ranking officials in security service, in intelligence, in office of the president, to supply Russian side with extremely sensitive information day by day about, for example, a scheduled meeting of the president, of the head of his office, the plans of producing some kind of military equipments. Of course, they're interested in some saboteur operations. For example, if the person is working on 10 repairing factories, he have to broke some kind of metal things inside the tanks, and for example, in 2 days this tank will stuck on the battlefield. So it's also good for Russians.
Or if they can find somebody that they can influence or corrupt within the energy sector, that they can help,
and,
or your politics. Or I remember being here. I've been coming here for 25 years. I remember the period when they were influencing politics clearly. Corrupting Ukrainian politicians and journalists, corrupting journalists to put out fake propaganda stories as if they're real. All of this kind of, they're very good at it.
And the one more thing I would like to emphasize, they are working in social media. So just imagine, Russian side, they are using tools which were produced in Western countries, Facebook, Instagram, directly against, for example, United States. So Instagram against United States, Facebook against. What they are doing? They are trying not to притягнути на свою сторону людей, притягнути.
They're not trying to pull them over to their side.
No, they're just trying to compromise them.
They would like to establish situation of uncertainty. So when the person he is not believing, for example, in Republican Party, in Democrat Party, he is swinging from one side to other side. Okay, here's a simple example for you. Just imagine you are staying in the bus, and you are holding on the tube.
Yeah.
Okay, when a bus is going right and left, okay, you are holding on. Okay, it's unable for driver to make a mess inside the bus. But just imagine, you have no tube, and the driver goes left,
and
right.
You just go all over the place.
It's exactly what Russian
and
would
no
like.
steady footing.
Yeah.
So you're bouncing all over the place.
Yeah.
What I find so fascinating, Ivan, for you to say that, as somebody, because I saw this happening in Ukraine. I saw this happening in the Baltics. I saw this happening in Ukraine. I saw this happening in Georgia. Then I started to see it happening in Belgium.
Oh.
Then I started seeing it in France.
Romania.
Then I saw it in Brexit and Britain. Of course, we have the Romania situation. We arguably see it in the United States, and I say arguably because people get very defensive about that. But I wanted to talk to you about this because you guys saw this first. The former Soviet Union saw this new information warfare, corruption, espionage, covert activity. You saw it all first. What lessons can you, as an SBU intelligence or former SBU intelligence officer, provide to those people in the West, whether they're citizens in a democracy who are therefore involved, or intelligence officers, to defend themselves, or at least be aware of the techniques that have been used here previously, and are currently being used even in sophisticated democracies or previously sophisticated democracies like America?
Great question. But first of all, let's jump into history. No, not so deep history. 2022, maybe 2023. Do you remember Yevgeny Prigozhin?
Of course.
The chief of Wagner PMC group, but he was well known for establishing lots of outlets, mass media outlets, providing lots of disinformation.
Yes, the internet
to Olgin bot, Kremlin bots. Patriot, it was called probably.
The Internet something bureau that he had in St. Petersburg. Prigozhin.
Yeah, in St. Petersburg, Lachta Center.
Yeah.
But what I'm talking about, this Lachta Center, it's a name of building, Lachta. There were about up to 100 of employees, and their main duty was to provide disinformation, to spread disinformation all around the world. And one more, there were special detachment. It was called foreign detachment. They were only English-speaking persons, and where they were sitting separately from other of employees behind a wall of glass, and their main duty was to make lots of comments for English-speaking audience, and they got even норматив, як це називається? Норматив, да? Standards. They were standards. To keep conversation with, for example, with you, Philip, to keep conversation at least 2 or 3 comments, and you have not to understand that on other side is Russian-speaking person. So he has to make one comment for you, and you have to understand, oh, it's someone from, I don't know, Florida. And that second one comment, oh, it's a person from Florida. But on a third comment, you could start guessing, oh, no, the guy is typing in wrong way. His conversation is something.
His grammar's not quite right.
Yeah. So the standard was to keep in chat for at least 2 or 3 comments, and the person have not to understand who is on other side.
Is that to get the algorithm then to start to notice it and spread it, or why 2 or 3 comments?
Because it's considered to be enough to disperse of disinformation, to ввести заблуждение,
to bring misunderstanding.
To bring misunderstanding.
Yeah, to cause chaos, to cause.
Yeah, and that's all. And he goes for different
techniques, different topics.
Not techniques, different topics. Інша гілка обговорення. Different threads. So here he will type 1-2 comments, and the next post he will comment to post.
And they're so knowledgeable about us. They study us so much that they can make one comment to a Proud Boy. Are you familiar with the Proud Boy movement in the United States? And then one comment to the BLM, the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yes.
And they don't care about the message. The point is to divide and conquer. Ukrainians know this very well because the Russians have divided and conquered Ukraine throughout its entire history. That's part of the way that they controlled this colony of theirs, was to pit people from Odessa against people from Kharkiv against people from Lviv. So Ukrainians know this well. So I let me ask it in a different way. Yeah. How can my audience
to withstand with it?
How do they defend themselves against? This is not simply information warfare in my mind. There's real life repercussions, right? There's result that affects people's lives. How do we defend ourselves?
Okay, I've got two options for your audience, okay, which I used for every day. First of all, do not be best person with passion in social media, because lots of information spreading across social media, they are with passion. Something, for example, Trump announced to stop funding, I don't know, healthcare system. Oh my God! And once you got this information, you would like to spread this information with your friends, with your colleagues, with your employees. Shh, calm down, just relax, take a deep breath. And the second option, start reverse finding. Okay, find out where this information comes out. Just copy the headline of this article, insert the Google line, and start seeking for this information. If this information is not spreaded by huge mass media outlets, for example, I don't know, CNN, NBC, BBC, Al Jazeera, okay, you have some doubts.
Mm-hmm.
So start reverse finding of this information, because I've saw lots of misleading information with huge headlines, and when I started seeking this information, Google brings me the only one, this article, which
from some obscure, the Chicago News Tribune, which doesn't even really exist.
Yeah, I always use the site themovieshit.com.
Yeah, where does that come from? Yeah.
So, first of all, calm down and start reverse finding. It will help you to get rid of lots of misinformation spreading across your feed line.
And I think it's also very important for us to relay to an audience that maybe doesn't recognize the seriousness of what Russia is that they're doing. They can't fight the West with tanks. Yeah. They'll lose. But they can fight us
for your brains.
In our brains, in our body politic. They can divide, again, going back to the divide and conquer. I'd also like you, as a Ukrainian and somebody who is involved in this fight, because it is a fight, to express to my audience that this isn't just internet stuff. There's real life, human lives that are on the line. By doing what they did in Ukraine, they caused all sorts of chaos and disruption and fighting, and Ukraine seems to have more or less overcome, although it's a constant battle. But this war was an inevitability. But I'm trying to think if there's another example of a country where, because of this interference, Britain. Let's take Britain and Brexit, which was clearly, at the very least, Russia contributed to the Brexit vote. And now look at the devastation that has happened there. Yeah. It's arguable that the Russians helped. I believe they did, having studied in my own way their techniques in 2016, which brought Trump to power, and then the chaos that has caused. I need somebody from Ukraine to tell an audience in the West, my audience, this isn't just mild fooling around on the internet. What have you seen in terms of what they do with their information and their covert operations that does very real damage? Where do we need to be defending ourselves? And again, you've already, I'll clarify just slightly more. You've already done the intelligence, but they also do things like we know they infiltrated, for example, the NRA in America. Okay. They know that they gave money to extreme right-wing influencers on the internet through tenant media. I'd like you to express, as a Ukrainian who is fighting a war both on the ground but previously, through these techniques, the seriousness of what it is that they do in our Western institutions.
Okay, first of all, they would like to undermine your current life. They would like to propose you something in the clouds. You have to get rid of your authority, your current leaders, and maybe in the future you will have the more good life comparing with your current position. But you have to understand, you have to ask yourself, what kind of life there will be? What kind of wealth of myself will be? What kind of your proposal? Not just a blah, 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 blah. Please tell me, what you propose me? Russia Federation, Russian propaganda, they proposing something unmaterial. So we provide you with a great life. With look at Russia, we've got Matryoshka, we've got a big theater, we've got Pushkin, But you can see on regular Russian citizen, in regular Tula, Arkhangelsk. So
Perm,
it's not a Chicago, it's not a Florida, it's not a Boca Raton. You have to understand. Just a Google Arkhangelsk city center and just see how this city looks like and comparing with your own city, with the place you're living currently in. So understand what is going on. Of course, with no doubts, Moscow and St. Petersburg extremely beautiful cities because lots of money from different regions are
flow to
Moscow,
yes.
And but there is no other city.
Maybe a little town center in Ekaterinburg or
maybe
a little something. But you're right. It's a Potemkin village. They show the world St. Petersburg, Moscow, Sochi, but they won't show Murmansk.
And one more funny thing that lots of Russian regular residents, citizens, they hate Western people.
Mm-hmm.
They hate Western type of life. And when they asked with the next question, have you ever been to Italy? No. Have you ever been to San Diego? No. But I hate them. Where's the logic? But I hate them. And here's a joke in Russia. There are two ways of operating regular Russian citizen. First of them, to get a green card in the United States. Second one, if you are rejected, to destroy the United States.
There's the old joke of the embassy in Moscow, which had a small protest, paid or supported or influenced by the powerful, but you walked around the corner and the visa section had a line, and it was true. When I lived in Moscow,
without jokes, really.
They really hate, they influence their population to hate America as well. But then there's also,
and I could explain you why,
envy and desire as well.
Could explain you why. Your audience have to understand there were extremely lot of pretty much number of talented Russian propagandists. They're working on mass media, and one of them, outstanding, is Vladislav Yurievich Surkov. He was previously помощник. He was previously
deputy.
No, помощник,
helper,
deputy,
assistant, deputy.
Putin's deputy.
Yes,
and he developed the system and the knowledge and the movement for Russians. It's much more easier to unite people against someone or against something. For example, against this glass of water. Oh, it looks awful. I hate it. The water is not so clear. So it's much more easier because to unite people for something, it's much more harder to explain why we have to stand with this glass because it's good, it's clear, it's sophisticated. It's much more difficult, but it's much more easier to say they are traitors. Kill them. Wow, super.
Yeah. Negative, hate, fear. I am very familiar with Mikhail Lesin,
who
did a similar thing in the rise of Putin.
But Surkov He's talented.
Sukhov.
He's busted, but he's talented bastard.
Well, what I find interesting and what I find disturbing, and anybody who's watched my show before and is an audience member knows I talk about Lessin because Lessin disturbs me in the way that he died.
Yeah.
Because he was right about
Suddenly.
he was right about to talk to somebody in U.S. law enforcement in the run-up to the 2016 election, and he's found dead in a Washington
in his room.
hotel room in very suspicious circumstances. So, look, I think this is all very important, and I appreciate you coming here and talking to us about the very real threat that these Russian covert espionage, information,
and they're still
techniques.
doing right now, and they will do it even.
How much do you think they have infiltrated into the West, and in particular the United States?
There is no so sophisticated agents among Western society. We could see, for example of Anna Chapman.
Mm-hmm.
It was a Russian female agent. Look, she's not so. It's not a James Bond.
No, she wasn't very sophisticated.
No. And there were lots of families. They came from USSR or Russia Federation in previous decades to United States. They've got regular type of life with barbecues, with playing on the backyard, but they're working on Russian intelligence. But at the same time, they're not able to provide Russian intelligence with some kind of information because they're not connected with high United States high officials. I mean, some senators or different MPs or whatever. So, and they're using to provide foreign intelligence agency of Russia Federation with common information from mass media, with some rumors, maybe the more sophisticated agents they are doing next. For example, lady, she's owner of some art gallery or jewelry store,
yeah.
and she's able to attract people to send invites for for some Pentagon staff. Hey, I'm inviting you we come and visit our jewelry store. I've got some discount for you. Maybe let's go on picnic. Started sharing some information, and they're expecting these guys will provide these Russian assets with. Now, currently, we are working in Pentagon with highly secret information about super Wunderwaffe stealth flying helicopter. And suddenly I've got some documents. You could see it, you could share, you could make a photo of these documents. So Russian expecting to get this kind of information, but they are not able to do this.
But they are able to change people's perspective and their minds. Look at Tulsi Gabbard, who says that all she used to do was watch RT. Yeah. And RT is a weaponized information asset of Moscow. You know, you look at people who are inside the cabinet, you look at people who are influencers or who have large platforms or a big voice. They may not have to get a copy of a secret schematic for the next tank, but they can change the idea that America is bad and that there's a deep state and there's shadows and everything is working against you. And it's best for you to tear it all down. So they use this. Is this something that you also, because I certainly see that, and I'm wondering how much you see of that.
Okay. To be much more clear for your audience, okay, I've got a proposal. If some of your audience have doubts about whether Russia is on good side or on a dark side, okay, just take a piece of paper and start writing what is Russia could propose to you. Okay, for example, one part of paper from United States and the other from Russia. For example, what US got, for example, freedom of speech. Okay, does Russia got freedom of speech? No. Okay, Okay, let's go in material way. US created Microsoft, Windows. Does Russia have a Windows? No. Maybe they've got something, some sophisticated computers, for example, Dell. No. Dash. Maybe iPhone. They've got some iPhone killer. It was called.
I remember this phone.
Yotaphone.
Yes.
This Yotaphone was sold only 2,000.
They were terrible.
2,000 of Yotaphone for whole history. 2,000.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason for that. They were terrible phones. I played with one before.
Okay. Okay. US got Ford, Chrysler. What got Russians? Lada Kalina. It's a piece of crap. Sorry.
Yeah.
But they've got Boeing. No. They've got Lockheed Martin. No. They've got SpaceX, Starlink. No. But what they got? They've got FSB, foreign intelligence. They've got lots of law enforcement agencies. And one last example. Your not maybe your colleague Evan Gershkovich. He arrived. He arrived.
Wall Street Journal.
He arrived to Russia, and he was sentenced for 16 years in prison for obtaining some secret information. But nobody knows exactly whether he was obtaining this information or it was just
Yeah, they don't have a lot to offer, but what they do, again, is they turn us against ourselves, and they make us to tear down our own institutions and our own strength, and they use it against us. They're very good at it.
Yeah.
But you're right to point out, what do they offer in the alternative? It's the reason why I have a quote by Abraham Lincoln at the end of every episode, which is basically saying, we may be kind of screwed up in the West, but what's the alternative that you offer Russia?
Yeah.
And it's pretty bleak. I'm going to let you go because it's been a delightful conversation, but we could go on for hours and hours more. But let me circle back to the war itself, and also in terms of what we've been discussing about your kind of intelligence officer expertise. Where do you think the war goes from here?
You mean on
both in terms of what is the prospect for success on either side of the equation? What's the future? Where does this go?
Where it goes, I think on the battlefield, it's not for Ukrainian side. It's not so good, but from economic perspectives, it's not so good for Russia. We have to understand because of oil price, they're going down. OPEC countries, they announced they will increase number of oil on the market, and it's worst scenario for Russia Federation, for Russian budget. So from my perspective, I see that if situation will go worst in economic, it will force Russian leaders to maybe not to quit war, but to reduce level of intensification, to reduce level of battle clashes, and start making some cooperation, start making some deals with Western countries and especially with Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And as we discussed also, as bad as the situation is for Ukraine, do you see some sort of imminent collapse in the defenses?
No. Look, we're not talking about a collapse on a battlefield. Look, okay, of course, we've got problems there, but the battlefield, the front line is holding on. Okay, we have to retreat. We have to leave some locations, to leave some cities, but once more, they're capturing. What they're capturing? They are not capturing the city. But this is location. It's called location. It's 100 of thousands of tons of concrete debris with dead bodies of Ukrainian soldiers, with dead bodies of Russian soldiers, with dead bodies of civilians, dead corpse of animals, and maybe tens of thousands of unexploded mines, shells. It's a minimum number. And Russians, they have no clue what they have to do with this territory. Of course, in previous years, in previous centuries, it was necessary, for example, to capture the city and start running the city or capturing seaside and starting a trade. But here is senseless war, extremely senseless war. One last example. When Russian captured some Ukrainian location, I don't remember exactly what was the city, and this puppet chief of Donetsk, Pushilin, he stated, "Oh, finally, we captured lots of deposits of lithium, and now we will start extracting this lithium and selling it on the market." Hey, come on. Calm down. Lithium, it's not a coal. It's not a coal mine. You are not able to send two guys and start digging and extracting the coal. It's completely different technology. It needs maybe several million of dollars of investments. It needs hundreds of specialists to understand how it's going on, to establish fabric, to establish facilities. And Russia, they are not able to do this.
Well, we're going to have you back because that just opens up the category of discussing the mineral deal, which, has been apparently, is going to be passed through and will be ratified. And that relationship between the United States and Ukraine will develop a pace. But we're going to have you come back and talk about that, which I hope you'll agree to do because I think there's so many more topics to talk about. But the very last question I have is, aside from, the fact that Russia is unlikely to obtain their strategic goals in Ukraine on the battlefield, but they might be able to gain some victories when it comes to this other war, this shadow war, this hybrid war that they're conducting against the West. Just that last question, how successful do you think they will be, and how can the West turn it around? Because right now, I think they're losing that war, that hybrid war that's being waged. What's your prognosis? What's your expectation for
Look, I'm totally sure that Russia, they definitely need to continue war. Not hybrid war. Okay, hybrid.
Both the war on the ground here and the hybrid.
And I'm not talking about Ukraine. They need to continue war on the ground in different other locations, because during this last 3 years of war, they get used to live in a war period time. On the propaganda, non-stop war topic. Russian voinkors, military correspondents, they're talking only about the war. Lots of Russian citizens that are used to earn lots of money on the battlefield. I will explain you. For example, one-time amount which would be paid for someone who signed the contract with Russian Military of Defense, it starts from $20,000 up to $40,000. It depends on region. So just imagine $40,000 for signing the contracts, and they're about $2,000 up to $3,000 per month. It's a payment. It's not a payment for working on a building site or in the metro station where you could get only $500 per month. Here you got $3,000, and they are not get used to do something different. They used to wage a war, to kill, to shoot, and they definitely need to do this war in different other locations. I don't know, Baltic countries, North Kazakhstan.
So you think the war is going to expand?
I think they are thinking about it. They definitely need something victorious operation, because this military operation in Ukraine wasn't victorious. Well, 100%. So they need, and the Russian authorities, they're also living in war constantly. Just about the budget, 30% of Russian budget is spent on military purposes. 30%, not for healthcare, social programs, school buses, no. For tanks, battle taxi, rockets, missiles, shells, So they still need war.
And that keeps people employed, and it's a self-fulfilling. They have to keep the war going because they have to keep people paid in the war economy.
It could be compared. Last comparison. When you are driving your car at extremely high speed and you're trying to stop your car immediately, for example, you're pushing your gear stick into parking position. What will go next? All of your details will just blown up. So we have to understand the stop of war. The war will stop, and Russia will explain from inside. So they need to find new purpose, new aim in the life.
Mm-hmm. Well, Ivan Stupak, I appreciate you coming here. I think we've only scratched the surface, and I think there's so much more that we could talk about. So if you're willing, somewhere down
pleasure.
the road,
Thank you.
I would love to have you back on. Maybe we'll take some questions from the audience that they can propose to you. But it's been a wonderful conversation. I hope it's been interesting to you lot. But we'll have you back and we'll talk more because I think your perspective is a fascinating one and of great use
It was great
to
pleasure.
all of us. So thank you
so
so very much.
Take care.